Good evening, and thank you for joining Lakeland Vision and Polk Vision at Our Future, Our Choices Transit Forum this evening at Polk State College. I'm Sarah Roberts. I'm the Executive Director of Polk Vision, and Laura Rodriguez is my partner in this. She's out in the audience. She is the Lakeland Vision Executive Director as well. So thank you for coming. We'd also like to thank Polk State College for hosting us this evening and Dr. Eileen Holden for being a gracious supporter of all the initiatives that go on throughout the county. Tonight, we're going to provide you some information from different sectors of our community in relationship to transportation. The reason that we're doing this tonight is so we can present and talk a little bit further about the Polk County referendum, the 1% sales surtax for My Ride, My Road public transportation roadways and bus system. The referendum, as you can see on the screen, details the My Ride, My Roads initiative to provide comprehensive transportation and bus networks, including express bus service to airports, area attractions, and Veterans Hospital, transportation for night shift workers, maintenance, and improvements to the county's roadways, and construction of new roadways by levying a 1% sales surtax from January 1st, 2015 until December 31st, 2029, to be deposited into the trust fund and half shared with Polk Transit Authority. The voters may choose for the 1% transportation surtax or against the 1% transportation surtax. The partnership between Lakeland Vision and Polk Vision this evening is really to highlight what our future looks like with regard to transportation and your choices as a public. We really want to talk about 5 key questions and also the visions that both of these entities share. Polk Vision was established in 2004 as a partnership between the Board of County Commission, the community stakeholders, including the United Way of Central Florida and the University of South Florida at that time. And in 2004, they came together as a community and did town halls and forums to garner information about what was important to the residents of Polk County. That document then became the 501c3 nonprofit organization called Polk Vision. In the vision document, the community committed to the following. Polk County will have a world-class, fully integrated education system that supports the needs of a vibrant, progressive community. Polk County will have an economic development environment that attracts quality businesses with higher-paying jobs, improves productivity, and retains educated young people. Polk County will have growth management infrastructure that protects the environment, enhances quality of life, supports education and economic development, and is economically sustainable. Polk County will have a quality of life that encourages diverse backgrounds to live in harmony while developing physically, spiritually, mentally, and culturally within a healthy and safe environment. And finally, Polk County will have partnerships with government and citizens to ensure that Polk County is a premier place to live, learn, work, and play. All of the community residents, which now total about 610,000 people throughout our county, agreed to this, and they brought forth all of those topics that I just stated there in 2004. And we revisit those every year as a board and as community leaders that we bring together at Polk Vision. Similarly, Lakeland Vision actually was established before Polk Vision in the late 1990s. And Lakeland Vision has strategic elements that discuss the following: strong job growth, featuring higher wage jobs and careers for citizens of all ages, skill levels, and abilities. A diverse business environment that attracts a wide variety of high-tech, high-skill, high-wage business. Sorry, I'm used to saying high-tech, high-skill wage. High-wage businesses. Prosperous technologically advanced community that attracts and retains a young, innovative, and talented workforce with a creative environment. Supports small business, downtown retail, attractive malls, and shopping districts. Lakeland Vision also works to promote local attractions, distinctive image, sporting events, high-profile events attracting visitors from near and far, ensure public infrastructure to keep up with the needs of a growing population, a healthy community that promotes healthy lifestyles for people of all ages, and a variety of innovative career training opportunities that help citizens develop skills for an ever-changing job market and achieve their desired quality of life. So you can see that this partnership between Polk Vision and Lakeland Vision is exceptionally beneficial to all of the residents of Polk County, and we're very excited that Lakeland Vision chose to partner with us and have been very instrumental in bringing our panel together and working on this very big project. Now what we want to look at is the vision for the county and its cities. As you can tell from all those bullet points, it all requires transportation. So tonight we're going to look at 5 key questions, and that's what our panelists are going to help us answer. How will we move goods throughout Polk County and beyond? How will we educate our future workforce? How will we connect community services to our youth? How will we provide mobility to our seniors? And who will call, ultimately, Polk County home? And first, and with that, I'd like to introduce each of our panelists. First, we have Bob O'Malley from CSX. Bob O'Malley is Resident Vice President of State Government and Community Affairs in Florida for CSX Transportation. In this role, he is responsible for state and local government relations and community affairs throughout Florida. Bob previously held positions as a public affairs consultant for Tallahassee-based Sachs Media Group and as Director of Public Affairs and Strategic Planning for Metropolitan Orlando, the regional transportation planning organization for Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. Bob is a graduate of the University of Central Florida, go Knights, with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and a Master's of Public Administration. He also attended the Senior Executives and State and Local Government program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Bob serves on the Board of Directors for Associated Industries of Florida, Orlando Business Force, and City Year Orlando, as well as the Advisory Board for the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida. Bob is a member of Leadership Florida Class 30. And we appreciate Bob coming today and representing CSX. Next, we have Dr. Eileen Holden, our host of the evening here at Polk State. Dr. Holden became Polk State's 4th president in 2006, bringing to Polk County more than 20 years of experiences as an instructor and administrator. A lifelong educator, Holden holds a bachelor's degree in secondary education from Utica College of Syracuse University, a master's degree in teaching English and reading from the University of Houston, and a doctorate in higher education administration from Nova Southeastern University. Since being named president, she has led Polk State through a period of unprecedented growth. Under her leadership, the college in 2010 launched its first bachelor's degree, the Bachelor of Applied Science in Supervision and Management. The college has since added the Bachelor of Science in Nursing and a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. In addition to her work at Polk State, Holden is an advocate for higher ed on a statewide level, serving as the past chair of the Florida College System Council of Presidents and past president of the Florida College System Activities Association. She also serves on the boards of, first, Polk Vision, which we're very proud of, Greater Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce, volunteers in service to the elderly, Winter Haven EDC, United Way of Central Florida, the Central Florida Regional Development Council, Winter Haven's Women's Resource Center, Polk Wirtz, the Haines City EDC, Heart of Florida Regional Medical Center, Florida High Tech Corridor Council, and Winter Haven Hospital. She's also previously served on the board of directors for the Lakeland Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Dr. Holden, for being here. Next, we have Jane Waters-Thomas, who is from here in Winter Haven. She's actually a Lakeland native, and she'll be answering the question, how will we connect our community services to our youth? Jane has worked throughout Polk County in education, outreach, and lifetime wellness. Joining Arts Ensemble in 2006 as the executive director, she began establishing the outreach programming to promote the importance of cultural arts in Polk County. She has led the program in program development, including Artist in Residency, Art in Public Places, the Urban Arts Initiative, the Eloise Visual Arts and Life Skills Center, and START, an early arts intervention program for young children. She has served as a panelist for the LEAD Forum on Arts and Culture in Polk County, as well as an area coordinator for the Arts and Transit for the last 2 years as a volunteer. Jane is also the executive director of Keep Winter Haven Clean and Beautiful. Additionally, she's a certified personal trainer and owns Boxing for Life, a fitness and lifestyle wellness program. She holds certification in early childhood development from Florida Southern College and Polk Community College, now Polk State College. So we thank Jane for being here this evening. We're also pleased to have another Jane that we're very excited about, Jane Hammond. After years of working as a biochemist and software developer for the biotech industry in the DC area, Ms. Hammond came to Florida in 2006. Answering an ad to cut grass for seniors, Ms. Hammond began volunteering for Faith in Action of Central Florida, which is now called Elder Point Ministries. Faced with hiring a new director or closing, Ms. Hammond stepped forward and became the executive director of Elder Point Ministries in 2007, an organization dedicated to improving the quality of life for seniors in our community. Ms. Hammond has since worked with a collaborative group at Polk County Transit, the Florida Department of Transportation, the Center for Urban Transportation Research, and other community groups to develop and implement a volunteer transportation program called Bluebird Mobility Network. Bluebird Network has twice received awards from the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged for the innovation and operation of their service. The program has been used as a model for replication around the state and was referenced as best practices by Senator Nelson on Capitol Hill. Ms. Hammond now leads the Lakeland Council from Lakeland Vision on Seniors Subcommittee for Transportation and Mobility and works to advocate for senior transportation for both service and infrastructure. Elder Point Ministries also has programs which address senior hunger and affordable housing. And thank you for coming over from Lakeland this evening. Finally, to address who will call Polk County home in our future is Pat Steed. Pat Steed is the Executive Director of the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. She has served over 30 years in management and professional planning experience in regional, county, city, and private sector organizations. During her Florida planning career, she has served as a county and a city planning director, MPO coordinator, and project director for a national consulting firm. The CFRPC includes 5 counties in Central Florida and is the Economic Development District. As the lead agency in a HUD Regional Sustainability Planning Grant, staff works with 11 partner consortium members in developing a 2060 vision for the heartland of Florida. Pat's service includes myregion.org Board of Directors and Regional Economic Advisors, the Florida Regional Councils Association Executive Directors Advisory Committee, the Peace River Basin Management Advisory Committee, the Florida Department of Community Affairs, Rural Land Stewardship Area Agency Technical Advisory Team. You're all going to be tested on this later to see if you remember what I'm saying. Florida's Mobility Fee Stakeholders Group, the 2060 Florida Transportation Plan Advisory Committee, the Strategic Intermodal System Strategic Plan Update Leadership Committee, Polk Vision and Lakeland Vision Executive Committees, and a variety of other civic and professional leadership roles. I hope you'll join me in welcoming all of our panelists. So just to revisit with our vision forum this evening, My Ride, My Roads, Our Future, Our Choices, we have 5 key questions for the future of Polk County. How will we move our goods in Polk County and beyond? How will we educate our future workforce? How will we connect community services to our youth? How will we provide mobility to our seniors? And who will call Polk County home? And with that, we'll kick off with Bob O'Malley from CSX Transportation.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening. Again, my name is Bob O'Malley with CSX Transportation, and I'm here tonight to answer the question, how will we move goods in Polk County? And I would add, not just goods, but also we need to think about how we will move services. So if you own a landscaping business or a flower, if you're a florist or a deli that delivers sandwiches, you need to think about how transportation impacts your business. And as traffic congestion grows, you may need to hire additional drivers, and that has an impact on your business. Obviously, my presentation is going to be a heavy focus on freight rail, but I think some of what I say can translate to truck movements and other types of freight movement and service delivery. I'm here just to provide a fact-based presentation, not to take an opinion one way or the other, but to give you a perspective from a freight rail perspective, and then answer any questions that anyone might have. My first slide doesn't start off that well because we had some technical difficulties, so I won't be able to show you the video that we had been planning to show you, but if you have a moment when you're at home, if you want to go to YouTube and do a search for 2 million containers, 2,000 routes, it's a great video that GE actually put together. They filmed it at our intermodal terminal in Northwest Ohio, which is very similar to the new terminal that we just opened up in Winter Haven. And it doesn't just show you terminal operations, but it shows you the types of things that move through an intermodal facility. So the clothes that you're wearing, the shoes that you're wearing, any sporting goods, or basically anything that you would buy at Target or Walmart can fit in a container. So the containerized freight that comes into Florida is to serve the consumptive markets here in Florida. I'm going to give you a quick overview of CSX, not just as a commercial for CSX, but also when you're talking freight movement, even if you're talking local, you need to think about the global, because what happens globally has an impact locally as well. So this is the CSX rail network. So you'll see that the blue lines are our rail lines. And our terminal in Winter Haven connects any logistics or manufacturing businesses here in Polk County to New York, to Chicago, and our railroad also connects with the Western Railroad. So we connect to the entire, our rail network can connect a Florida business to the entire United States. We also connect with 70 ports. So we through those ports, connect businesses to the globe. And that's a very strong economic development asset. We've seen freight rail is trending up, and there are reasons for that. Trucking is always going to be the dominant mode of moving freight in this country, but we're seeing a good portion of that shift to rail, even trucking companies using rail for their long haul for a number of reasons. One, because of fuel efficiency. It's much more fuel efficient to move containers by rail. If you're moving a distance, anything over 500 miles, freight rail is much more competitive. So we'll see trucking companies put their containers on a rail, deliver it across country, and then pick it back up and for the local delivery. So, and then also traffic congestion has an impact on truck moves. A lot of trucking, I-75, for example, it sometimes is 40% truck traffic, and it's becoming harder and harder to make those moves by truck. And then also labor shortages. It's getting more difficult for trucking companies to recruit employees that want to do those cross-country truck trips. It's more focused on the day trips, the local trips, regional trips. And you're seeing that even trucking companies are seeing that they're buying less sleeper cabs and more day cabs. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about why we located an intermodal terminal here in Polk County. Some of the investments, we've been making some major investments in Florida. You'll see the blue line here is the S line that goes down the middle of the state. And we invested $200 million into that line. That was the result of, those were the proceeds of a sale that we sold 61 miles to the state so that they could have a commuter rail system. But we used the entire proceeds from that sale and reinvested it back into Florida freight infrastructure, including $200 million on that S line. And we added passing sidings, we double-tracked in some areas, and then we did a number of crossing upgrades. And those crossing upgrades actually have been a nice benefit to some communities like Ocala and Lakeland, and they've been able to apply for quiet zone designation because of those. And then also, the map there shows the location of the Winter Haven terminal. And that location is important because it's right in the center of the state. So from there, we can serve the Orlando market, we can serve the Tampa market, we can serve Miami. So it's a great location from a freight rail standpoint. What was happening and what we've seen is a lot of Florida-bound containers are actually moved out of Atlanta. They're railed into Atlanta distribution centers, and then they're trucked down I-75, as I mentioned, to Orlando, to Polk County, to Tampa, to Miami. And by locating in Winter Haven instead, those same trucking companies can make those deliveries in a day trip instead of coming down from Atlanta. So it's more advantageous to be in Polk County. Here's a photo of our new terminal. It opened April 2nd. We just had a big event last week. Had a great crowd come out and see. We've got 3 wide-span cranes and 5 service tracks that go under those cranes. But these are a very efficient way of moving containers off of the trains and onto a truck for local delivery to those markets that I talked about. And then here is the yellow is where the terminal is. The adjacent property is 932 acres, and we are working with a developer, a third-party developer, to build up that site and to locate third-party shippers, and then big box retailers. And our experience in other parts of the country when we've opened intermodal terminals is companies like Best Buy or Amazon or Walmart will open up distribution centers and warehouse facilities close to an intermodal terminal. So the terminal serves as a magnet for development for this site. And again, that's to replace those distribution centers that are in Atlanta. It allows the freight to come closer by rail so that the truck delivery is shorter. And then one more thing just to talk about as far as what we're focused on from a transportation standpoint. Obviously, when it goes onto a truck, it's going to need to be delivered off of our property. And for us, one thing we're focused on is the Central Polk Parkway. It's an important project for us. But then beyond that, we recognize there are other road improvements in Polk County that are important, not just for us, but for other companies that are locating here. So Publix is already here, Saddle Creek is already here, and even Amazon is building a fulfillment center in Polk County. So those major employers rely on an effective road system to be able to deliver those goods. And then those are all big companies. But like I said in the beginning, also you need to think about how your transportation system impacts small businesses and their reliance on an effective transportation system. So they may not be delivering large containers like we are, but they're delivering services or they're delivering goods that they produce in their business and that they sell to their customers. And I know there'll be time for some Q&A, and happy to answer any questions about freight movement in Polk County, but I also want to make sure that my contact information was up there in case anyone didn't get an opportunity to ask a question, or if you think of a question later, please feel free to contact me and let me know. So thank you.
And I think as you were greeted before you came into the auditorium, you were given note cards. If you'd like any other note cards for questions, you can give those to Carol or to Laura or ask for a note card, and we'd be happy to do questions on there. And you can say if it's specifically for one of the panelists or if it's a broad-based question that you'd like answered by any one of the panelists. You may certainly do that at any time. And now I want to link in why we invited CSX to talk about transportation. Transportation is multimodal. It is not just a mass transit system. It is not just roads. It could be for pedestrians. It could be for bicyclists. It could be for any number of methods of getting from point A to point B. And CSX not only has brought with it this unbelievable system for Polk County and as the center of the state, we're the heart of Florida here, and we're so proud to have them, but we also want to be able to provide them with workers and with a workforce that can not only work at CSX, but can work at Amazon and who can impact our economic development. So transportation is a big piece of that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Holden from Polk State College because they have a great relationship with CSX and the pipeline of workforce which will ultimately really enhance our economic development efforts.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you and good evening. My role here this evening is to talk about how access to education and workforce training can contribute to the economic viability of our county and our region. Access with a capital A is the hallmark of Polk State College and the 1,200 community colleges throughout this country. Access to affordable, quality, higher education. Access means academic access, access means financial access, and access means geographic access. If you have a public institution in your county or your region and people are not able to access that education, then it's not really access. It's just a word. So let's take a look at accessibility of Polk State College. We have just under 17,000 students here. 95% of them live and work in Polk County. You look at our average age, it's about 26 years old. We have campuses in Lakeland and Winter Haven, 3 centers, and 3 charter high schools. So one would look at that chart and say, well, there's access, we're all over the county. But I can tell you in talking to many, many students here at Polk State, that if you live in Frostproof or you live in Lake Wales, and the program and courses you want to take are on the Winter Haven campus, you might as well say you need to go to the moon. It's not access for people who live in those communities if they can't get to class. And if you look at 74% of our students being part-time, Many reasons why they are part-time and not seeking full-time employment is because their part-time jobs are around where they live, because they don't have access to the full complement of workforce opportunities that are there. I survey our students a lot of times to try to get a pulse on what issues they have on their radar. And one of them is affordability. We're very proud of the fact that 80% of our students graduate with 0 student loan debt. That's important to us. Our students are juggling their families, their work, their part-time work, and their studies. When we survey students consistently, and 2 issues come up all the time. Well, actually 3. One is they don't like the food in the cafeteria, but I usually just discount that. 2 issues come up consistently. One is transportation, and the other is childcare. So if you look at the transportation part of that survey and drill down a little bit more, you say, what is it about transportation that is difficult? Well, it's the size of the county, it's the cost of operating a car, it's the fact that when you're here, your car is sitting in the parking lot, so your children, your spouse, anyone else isn't using the car. So one of the things that we did, I'll give you a little bit of who our students are too, and all of this is intended to give you a snapshot. There's no one-size-fits-all for the 17,000 students that come to Polk State College. It isn't that everyone lives in the suburbs. It isn't that everyone has 2 cars. Our student population is a microcosm of this community. So 86% of our students are the first in their family to go to, need academic support. So what does that mean? They need to come for tutoring. They need to be here longer than their classes. 47% of the students receive need-based financial aid. I've said this many times publicly. The elephant in the middle of the room in our community is poverty. It transcends race, it transcends ethnicity, it transcends gender. If you can't afford to get somewhere, whether that's to the doctor, whether that's to school, whether that's to work, then you have no access. And for those of us who have been blessed in our lives to have an education and to have options, it's very humbling to hear our students talk about how they have to withdraw from a class, not because academically they're doing poorly, but because their transportation isn't reliable. Many of our students in our health programs, they have to get to clinicals at 6 a.m. That's a transportation challenge. One of the things that we did at Polk State College in April of 2012, in response to the consistent responses to our student surveys, is to sign an agreement with the Polk Transit Authority so that with a valid ID, any student or employee could ride the buses free in Polk County. It was an experiment, a pilot. It was telling our students, we're listening to what you're telling us in the survey. Well, in April 2012, we had about 2,400 ridership throughout Polk County. By offering access, and that's what we did, we offered access to transportation, and we didn't limit it to just coming to Polk State College. They could use their valid Polk State College ID to take the bus to go to a doctor, to go shopping, to go anywhere they needed to get to, because grocery shopping is a challenge as well. For many people who live in rural areas and the only option for them is a mini mart where prices are more expensive than if you were able to go to one of the major retailers. So now, if you fast forward to 2014, we've more than doubled our ridership on Polk Transit. So what that tells me is students needed access to reliable transportation. It's not perfect, the way it is. It needs to be improved. But we're going to have students graduate on time more, and we're going to have students be able to stay in school rather than have that difficult choice. The decision to partner with Polk Transit Authority is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made as a president or as an educator, because we can talk the talk about access and it being our hallmark, but unless we do something to help students, then we're not walking the talk. So with that, I will close with a comment, because I went home today and my mailbox, like everybody else's mailbox around this time of year, is inundated with people telling us what to do and how to vote. And as an educator, all I can tell you is there's no substitute for learning about the facts and the issue on your own. Don't rely on anyone to tell you what to do or how to vote in any election. Study the issue, get the facts, and make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. We appreciate you and Polk State's partnership with this forum and with so many things that we do at Polk Vision and at Lakeland Vision. I'm going to scroll back. So now, as you've just heard a little bit about Polk State College and access for our students and the ability for people to pursue higher ed in Polk County and how important that is, I'd like to introduce Jane Waters-Thomas, and you can stay there, Jane, or you can come to the podium either way. It's entirely up to you.
I'm great.
And Jane's going to help us answer the question, how will we connect community services to our youth? And one of the keys to this question was, we can provide services all over our county, but if people can't access them, to take Dr. Holden's word, it makes it increasingly difficult to better the community, to make better choices, more educated choices for our future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jane Waters-Thomas from the Arts Ensemble.
Thank you very much. I think probably the very first thing that I would say with regard to transportation for specifically the families that I work with is that it is the only way that they can get to community programming most often. In the areas that I work at in Eloise or in Bartow, some of the areas that we work at in Lakeland and do programming, if those teenagers, specifically teens, could not make it to us by way of public transportation, and keep in mind that has to happen before 7:15 at night, which is impossible to do quality, safe programming for nighttime, because there's no way for them to get to us currently, which, if this passes, that's the biggest thing for us, is that it opens up possibility for safe programming in the evening. But if we didn't have transportation, even as it is today, those children would not be able to make it to us. Now, we do programming for youth and seniors, but specifically with regard to transportation, you know, we see more than 40 to 50, and it's about 40, 45 right now, students in our after-school programs all over the county. Our teenagers that are in those programs rely on public transportation in order to get to the next place that they're going to go if they don't live in that community. And one of the things that our staff is challenged with is making sure we know what the bus schedule is and how to get them onto the bus and where to go. I think the thing that we all need to remember is that residents of low income and poverty really, really is, as Dr. Holden just mentioned, the thing that's just right in the middle of our room in Polk County. With regard to what I do, though, it's the entire program. All of our children are subsidized. All of our children are low income. All of our students require the assistance that they deserve in public transportation to get to the programs that offer opportunities for higher education. But also, some of these teenagers absolutely have to work. They have to work for a living. They get to a certain place in their life, and it's a requirement of their family. And without public transportation, how do we get them there? Well, we are not getting them there at night right now at all. Right now, we really rely on mentors and volunteers as they're available to drive these children to Wendy's or McDonald's or get them home safely. So with regard to community programming, specifically for the work that I do in arts outreach and education and life skills programming, Public transportation is vital. It's absolutely vital. I would lose more than half of my teen population today in my programming were it not for public transportation. So an increase in funding for public transportation for youth programming really just means more quality programming. It gives us the opportunity to bring in tutors that can work with teenagers at night, not only for the 2 or 3 hours that we have them in the afternoon. It gives us that availability to get them to the next life skills program, maybe finance wellness, for instance, which, oh my goodness, a whole lot of our students need that kind of thing. So public transportation, obviously for higher education, for night students, for single parents, for some of the seniors that are in our program, we can't do it without public transportation. And when I say we, I'm talking nonprofits that offer programming in life skills, in arts outreach education, in after-school programming for teenagers. We rely on public transportation for that. So, you know, when I think about this, it touches my heart. I'm very passionate about it. I'm pretty well known for being passionate about the things I do. But public transportation is needed, and it's needed so much more than what we're even providing right now. It's alarming. It's just alarming. Our programs are so centrally located primarily because we got to get the kids that can get to us. If we had greater resources in public transportation, we could begin to open programs in some of the areas that currently there is not a program for cultural arts introduction for teenagers. So public transportation, for the sake of what we do, is imperative, and I just cannot say enough how much we need to really think about this as we move forward in the voting process.
Thank you, Jane. We appreciate that passion and that information. And now we'll go to Jane Hammond, who's from Elder Point Ministries, the Executive Director, and how will we provide for our future aging population access for those senior citizens. And just a little background, as our baby boomers age, we will have a larger percentage, and Pat will talk about this in a little while, of our aging population will be equivalent to our millennial population. So we will need services to be provided for seniors to age in place and other opportunities that I know that you all have looked at Elder Point Ministries.
Yes, absolutely. So don't steal all my numbers. But what I wanted to talk about today was trying to understand what are the mobility issues that our seniors face in our county. It's not just about, when we talk about mobility of seniors, it's not just the rides piece. First, I'd like to talk about the roads piece. As we all know, we live in Florida. We're expecting that there's going to be older drivers on the road. But actually, the percentage of seniors in our population is 20% right now, but that is projected to double in the next 10 years. So we have to make a plan now of how we're going to deal with not only a larger population of seniors, but more older drivers on the road. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just we need a plan. So what do older drivers need? They need things like the position of traffic lights centered over lanes. They need things like reflective borders on signals. They need painted curbs on the medians so they can see that better. They need internally lit street signs. These are the types of things that not only we can, I think, agree, that doesn't help just an older driver. I have teenage drivers. I drive myself everywhere. I'd like to see that curb a little better sometimes. So these are positive things that we think about for older drivers, but they're obviously beneficial to us all. Then also just the concept of visual changes in the road allow all drivers actually, but especially our older adult drivers, to see and anticipate road conditions easier. So this means as we age, we do slow, our reflexes do slow some, but the visual cues as well as physical changes can improve reaction times and actually help seniors be even safer drivers. So I think that that's an important piece, that we're not just talking about rides, because that's kind of the easier thing to think about. So let's talk about rides. Seniors need rides. When they age out of the driving population, we have to be able to provide them a reasonable transit system. Otherwise, they hold on to their license longer. It's very difficult to give up that independence of driving, and that creates a larger issue for us all, obviously. So our seniors, really, it's a really interesting topic of transportation because poverty is the problem in this county, undoubtedly. We are the 7th poorest suburban area in the United States. We are similarly 7th in hunger in this county, and we are somewhere in the top 10 of the worst transit options as well. So we're not hitting the top 10 list of good things. We're very challenged by poverty for sure. But what makes transportation interesting is in a county this size, even our seniors that have the economic means cannot necessarily procure transit for themselves. So it becomes a very difficult endeavor. For example, we provide volunteer transportation, and in the interest of transparency, I just want to be clear. We are a transportation provider, but we will in no way be impacted by this funding. We use federal funding to run our program in addition to private donation. So let's just be clear that we're not trying to increase our funding through this. But what we do is we provide additional transit for when we have transportation disadvantaged individuals in this county that can't secure other types of transit. So what does that really mean? It means that a lot of times we have an elderly wife who can't go visit her husband in an assisted living facility because she doesn't have the transportation to do that. It means that you go to you wake up one morning and you're not feeling very well. You call your doctor and they say, we can work you in at 1 o'clock, but now you have to get transportation to that 1 o'clock appointment. If there are very few programs available that will give you transportation with no lead time, our program will, if we have a volunteer driver. But that is a very difficult situation that I think we could all relate to. Or, just the other day I had a phone call in the afternoon from someone who had just been released from a rehab facility, and right before they left, the doctor had scheduled another test for them at the hospital the following day. It was a resident of Bartow having to get back to Lakeland Regional Hospital in less than 24 hours. This type of transit just isn't available. When we're talking about seniors, they may live near a fixed route. They may try they may be very capable of using fixed route transit. And that is certainly their best option because it's the most economical. But for most of our residents, the next best thing that they can do is use the Polk Connect, which is an ADA transit service that runs a quarter of a mile around any fixed transit route. So as we talk about increasing these fixed transit routes to some places that sound like, well, why would I care if I was a senior going to maybe Polytech or something? It's because every fixed route is required to have ADA transit around it. So it doesn't matter where that fixed route is expanding to, you're expanding the service to ADA clients. But unfortunately, there are a lot of residents in this very rural county, very large county, that live outside of those options as well. And so I also want to bring to your attention, if you don't know, this is I don't believe the tax is really the first place that the county went when they had to fund this. I want you to know that Polk County is one of the most awarded counties in the state from the Transportation Disadvantage Commission especially for their innovation and for their creativity. You have a lot of people working really hard in Polk Transit and Citrus Connection, in the Winter Haven Transit System, at the FDOT. They are all doing everything they can to bring in federal dollars, to bring in other creative options, to fund what they can. And unfortunately, all those options brought in still don't fund what we need to accomplish. So it's not like they just said, hey, what's the easiest way to go? You have a lot of people really working hard every day to try to find alternate ways to fund the transit. And that's basically all I have, other than, help the seniors get around.
Thank you, Jane, and I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad that you brought roads. Two of the key points from Jane just now I think really are important are the roads aspect of this referendum, as well as the planning and the partnerships between the DOT and the federal funding, county planners, city planners, of working together to really exhaust all their efforts to provide a good transit system for our Polk County residents. And it's 2,200 square miles in Polk County. Most people in the room know that, but we have a really large county here that we try to work around and live in and work and play in, and it's a lot of space in between those municipalities. With that, I'm going to introduce Pat Steed, who is from the Central Florida Regional Planning Council and basically is a really well-known subject matter expert on all things planning, and we're thrilled to have her as part of the Polk Vision team, and we're really excited. She's also part of the Lakeland Vision Board, and we're very excited to have her here tonight. Pat?
Thank you. I can see the green light. That's always a good sign when you talk about transportation. I want to talk a little bit about who lives here now and who we all talk about we wish lived here and who really we expect to live here in the future. And what does that really have to do with transportation and what our choices really are today and in the future? I'm going to talk a little bit about different age groups, and I happen to be a baby boomer, and I can remember when people said, oh, y'all young people, y'all just are going to take over the world. There's so many of you, you're going to change everything, and sometimes the older generations didn't particularly like that. And then we came along, and here we are becoming that older generation and really have gone through the life cycles that we've really talked about in terms of needs, the needs for education, the needs for youth and for our children to have access to programs, and also as we begin to look towards senior years and other options some of us may be having in retirement. But a big part of what we think about is our workforce, and I want us to think about that in terms of our community for the future. And I'm going to talk a little bit about millennials, and millennials are generally those that are considered between the ages of about 18 and 34 right now. And although we don't think about how large that group is going to be, that is going to be the largest group of our workforce, and it's not going to be too long before that transition happens. So what are some of the things that we have found out about our younger people and the people that will be really the rock of our workforce and our community, and they're a little different than some of the generations that have come before. The presence of college graduates has really been the best social or economic predictor of a community's future growth in each of the last decades. And every time this is looked at, it is repeats this. And what this really says is that according to this survey, a lack of transit options are going to contribute to a brain drain. I hope you appreciate the humor in my graphic. But we talk about often, how are we going to keep our brightest and best in our communities to serve us? We have so many tremendous colleges, universities, and technical schools here in Polk County. Many people outside the county do not realize what extent of great educational institutions we have. But when we graduate those students, so many of them leave. Part of them are looking for jobs, but many of them are looking for a lifestyle that we currently are not providing. So how does that relate to transportation? Well, according to a study that was called Millennials and Mobility, nearly 70% of millennials, that is people who are between 18 and 34 years old, use multiple travel modes several times or more per week. That's probably not true for all our generations, but it certainly is for them. And so if we do not offer these opportunities, we will continue to have the brain drain of some of our brightest and best and well-trained people that will grow up in our communities or come to have educational opportunities in our communities, and they will move on. So who else will call Polk home? The latest census revealed that the population of walkable urban and suburban areas grew much faster than the country's growth rate over the last 10 years, and this is accelerating. People want to be where there is walkability, where there are options, where we have what we call multimodal opportunities, and that is you have access to good roads and not too much congestion, but importantly, you have access to trails and to sidewalks, to using your bicycle safely, and to interchanging that with reliable public transportation. Millennials are increasingly multimodal, and they're moving to these communities that provide these robust public transportation options. And from 2001 to 2009, only 8 years, the number of passenger miles traveled per capita, this is with 16 to 34-year-olds, on public transit increased by 40%. That is an incredible number to grow that rapidly, and that trend is continuing in all surveying that's being done. We're going to look a little bit at Americans that are living in areas with public transportation. They have some benefits, and one of those is what they do with their time. It saves 865 million hours in travel time and 450 million gallons of fuel, energy economy, annually by making those options. It's also true that the residential property values perform 42% better on average if they're located near public transportation with high-frequency service. So that really does say there's value added where these services are available. Looking at a survey, again, of our millennials across 10 cities, we found that more than half said they would consider moving to another city if it had better access to public transportation. And we have found this true in all surveys and studies that are being done across America, is that young people, we think that they make choices, and I'm not going to say not just young people, people of all ages make choices because of jobs, but many of them it's because of the lifestyle they want to lead. It's because not wanting to be dependent upon that automobile or having those options that Dr. Holden talked about, that one member of the family can easily have access to a number of things like education or other activities while the other person might use that one automobile that's available. What we've seen is that 66% listed high-quality transportation as a top factor in deciding where to live. That is a very large number. And 88% of respondents said it is important that their communities offer affordable transportation options. So looking at this graph, which I always hate to show graphs, but I will, I want to tell you that the colors that you see shown there in dark blue represent 1983, and the numbers that you see in green represent 2008, and then the purple in front really represents 2010. Public transportation is the backbone of a multimodal transportation system because it can provide opportunities to multitask and socialize online while traveling. When you ask a young person, and I happen to have one of those young people, what had you rather do with your time, have a car and go anywhere you want to, or have another option? The answer is, I just want to be online and be able to play my games on my iPad or whatever on my way to work. And when I get to work, I don't mind working, but it's no interest in sitting in traffic jams and just spending long commutes. So this is overwhelmingly what we hear from young people in every survey, and what we find is a return to something that's kind of from long ago, when we used to have the rail corridors, which are very effective and have been for 50 years perhaps, that bring people on the Northeast Corridor down from the suburbs to work. And so the businessmen took advantage of that time for work, and then as the workforce expanded, so did all of the rest of us who joined that workforce, and it's something that is very enjoyable for people to do. So this is where we're really seeing this effect on changing young people's attitude. This looks at young people driving. In 1978, 75% of American 17-year-olds were licensed to drive. That percentage dropped to 69% in 1983, 49% by 2008, and 46% by 2010, and that number continues to drop. Our young people are just not that interested in getting that license and getting that card. They want to spend time with friends and people, and they want to socialize, and they want to interact with online media and electronics. So when we look at that, we think that these things begin to say the data is proof positive that millennials are leading a trend of Americans who are returning to walkable cities, towns, and suburbs with multimodal transportation options that include vibrant public spaces linked with reliable public transportation. I couldn't resist this one because I suspect some of us have had these examples. So what does this say? It says, let's have, okay. I'm going to get us back to where we're going fast. Let's have a moment of silence for all those who are stuck in traffic on their way to the gym to ride stationary bicycles. People want to have access to outdoors, to activity, to ride their bicycles, to put that bicycle on a bus should they want to be able to interact from their homes, from their workplaces, and to recreational places like our wonderful park systems throughout this county. But this is really true. We spend so much time in our automobiles, and what we really want to do is be able to enjoy some physical activity. And whether that is in some of our larger cities like Lakeland or Winter Haven, where we have more, perhaps, options available within them today, or whether that's into our smaller communities, such as Fort Meade or Lake Alfred or Frostproof, people enjoy coming to places where they can enjoy one another. Let's face it, people love to eat, they love to have entertainment, they love options to come together. And when we have walkability and connectivity to transportation to encourage that, we find that our towns and cities thrive in that. I want to take you to looking at now and into the future. This graph looks at age groups, and the age groups start looking at the first one, which you will find over on this side of the graph. It's the ages 0 to 14. The next group is 15 to 34 years old, 35 to 49, 50 to 69, and 70 plus. And with these, the years it looks at starting today, which is 2013, it looks at 2020, 2030, and 2040. And what we see is the growth that is expected here in Polk County. And these numbers are large numbers of growth that we're expecting. And certainly less than 50 years from now, we will have doubled our population. And maybe even in 40 years, we will have doubled our population. So the truth is, who is going to be part of this growth? Well, as you can see, overwhelmingly, those numbers are the young people that are going to be younger than 34. Those two groups are going to be a huge part of our population. The other part was very much what Jane referred to, and that's the people that will be seniors and ever increasing in ages that are older than 50 and above. And what will be the small group is actually that group in between. So you can understand when I tell you that those young people in the group 34 and younger are going to be a huge part of our workforce as we go forward. What has been interesting for me as a baby boomer to really begin to see is how much we actually have begun to come together and like a lot of the same things. I recently had an opportunity to visit with my granddaughter, who is a freshman in college, and she thought it was really neat and nifty to hang out with Grandma and Grandpa, which is pretty unusual to think about that. We found we have a lot of common interests. We love to do things that are a lot of the same kinds of things. We love to congregate, we love to walk, we love to go to parks, we love to do a lot of the same things along with, of course, eating. But the truth is, we find that is a preferential. We find that seniors are not wanting to live in isolated senior-only communities. They want to live in their communities or to move to a community where they feel like they can be fully a part of that. We find the same thing with young people who want to connect together in community. And what we really need to do is to think about how can we in Polk County make that available not only for the people that are here now, but for the people that will come, so that we cannot have the brain drain, that we can have opportunities to live, learn, work, and play here, and that people will say there's no better place to be than in Polk, and transportation will be one of the reasons that's true. And so with that, we ask the question, who will call Polk County home? Who will live here and what our economy will look like is largely dependent on the choices that we offer. Transportation will likely be the #1 on that list for not only the people that are here today, but the people that we expect in the future. I want to thank my fellow panelists as we have gone through exploring how will we move our goods in Polk County, how will we educate our future workforce, how will we connect community services to our youth, how will we provide access for senior citizens, and who will call Polk County home. It is our choice, and those choices will make a difference in what our future will look like. So I'd like to thank you and turn it back over to Sarah Roberts for our question and answer session.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you to all of our panelists. We do have a few questions. I don't know if there are more, but what we'll do is I'll ask a few of these questions, and we'll just open it up to, we'll just open it up to the whole panel to answer these questions as they see fit. Again, this is an educational opportunity. We wanted to share the ballot language from the referendum, and we obviously have several different points of view on the panel. But mostly about education of what transit is, what it looks like, that it's inclusive of roads and of sidewalks, of multimodal opportunities for transit, as well as how we move goods and services throughout the county. So one of the questions that we received was, regionally, what happens in our dealing with Tampa and Orlando and throughout Central Florida if we don't come to the table with a more comprehensive transit plan? And I don't know who wants to jump on that, but Eileen Holden is grabbing a mic.
Well, I'll just jump in with one word: connection. Being connected to Orlando and Tampa, to me, isn't an option. We have to be. We have to be in order for the economic viability of our community. I've heard people say we're the belt buckle, we're the middle part of that piece, and we can't talk about Polk County without talking about the region, and Tampa and Orlando are two major metropolitan areas in our region.
Bob could probably also talk about this as much as I could, but it's interesting about how important we really are here in Polk County to all transportation discussion, not just in Central Florida, but really to all Central and South Florida in particular. One of the things that we discovered was that when Tampa got ready to do a freight study for their area that didn't include Polk, they had to include Polk because we have so much significant things located here that are a part of not only freight and logistics, but the economy of the Tampa Bay area. When Orlando got ready to do their freight study, they didn't include Polk, and when they started doing it, they discovered that they had to identify Polk County and included that in their study because so much of the things that interacted with their economy were located here in Polk County. It is really, for many people looking outside of us, we have a seamless corridor in Central Florida, of which I would say we are not one of the lesser pieces, but we are one of the greater pieces in that linkage. But I think it's really important that we have looked at it from the standpoint of what that means in terms of our ability to move goods. But how we move our people and interact with those opportunities is really critical in that. I'd also like to say that when I look at it regionally, I'm looking not just east and west, but also south, and that we really have major important connectivity to southwest Florida, to southeast Florida, and that all of that really coming together in a seamless way is critical for the future of our county, and Polk has that unique place. So multimodal is critical because we, just as Bob referred to, we can't just look at people or goods. We must look at it all together. But Polk County is an essential linkage. We've heard terms like the super region before, where it's been looked at really all the way from coast to coast across central Florida. And every time we look at that, really the central part of that is the most critical linkage between the two coasts and the larger urban areas is really here in Polk. So those connections, I believe, are critical.
Yeah, I just kind of want to bring it down to the community level, just in the streets with teenagers. Some of the most important programs that teenagers can see are in communities outside of the community that they live in. And without transportation, we don't really give our teens who, by no fault of their own, live in a socioeconomic situation that deprives them from that kind of travel. We don't give them the opportunity to see what's available. You know, I use art as my tool to work in life skills with teenagers and with young people, but there are a lot of programs that take place in the Orlando and Tampa region that our kids would benefit from if they could get there. A couple of years ago, I asked my staff to just kind of take a poll on the youth. I was talking about the beach one day, and maybe 3 or 4 of the teens that were with me shared that they had never been to the beach. And I thought, how is that even possible? How is that a possibility that out of maybe 10 kids in the room, I'm going to say I think there was 11 or 12, but let's say there were 10 children in the room with me. We were just talking about things that had happened in the summer. And you know, we have a handful of kids that haven't seen the beach. This kind of transportation opens up a world to our kids that they do not know is real beyond what they see on a computer screen. And so when we see our teenagers not wanting to get their driver's license, it's because they don't need the real world experience. But yes, they do need the real world experience. They do need to smell the ocean. They do need to walk through a fabulous museum in another community. They do need those experiences, and transportation is the key to getting them there. Most of our students in our programs, and our clients for that matter, come from homes with no car. Not one car, but no car. For the families that do have one car, it's just as Dr. Holden said, they're not gonna give up their car for their quality of life income so that their kids can see the beach. It's not gonna happen. So transportation to Orlando, to Tampa, opens up a world that many students in this county really don't know is there, and without it, they can't see it.
Thank you. With regards specifically to roads, what will the impact of CSX be on the road system? You mentioned the Central Florida Parkway, or the green line that was on your map. And can you talk a little bit about that with regard to CSX and what the planning, and maybe Pat can talk about the planning of that road, but how will that impact your traffic routes and everything, and connecting you to the rest of the county, like the regional areas as well as Miami?
Sure. Well, the Central Polk Parkway will provide a direct connection to I-4, so that's, I think, a beneficial project that will be funded largely through a public-private partnership, primarily through toll revenue. But in addition to that, you know, not just CSX, but I was thinking when Pat was talking about, you know, regional connections, Port Tampa Bay is going to grow. Cargo through Port Tampa Bay is going to increase, especially with the widening of the Panama Canal. And the cargo that comes in there is going to be staged in distribution facilities. So we hope it's staged next to our terminal in Winter Haven, but it'll be staged somewhere nearby, within 100 miles. There's not the land available in Hillsborough County for those types of, that type of room. So it's going to move a little further west, and you'll see Polk County's opportunities from an economic development standpoint for distribution facilities and warehousing, that will grow. We've already seen Amazon located in Polk County. We've made significant investments in Polk County. So those economic development opportunities will increase. But one thing, you know, that I think a large impact will have as these jobs come to Polk County, you know, there's an old adage, the three most important things in site selection for a company are labor. Number one is labor, number two is labor, and number three is labor. Or now we use the term workforce, but that's what companies are looking for, is where are they going to get their employees? So as we develop the property adjacent to the terminal, you know, those big box retailers or third-party shippers are going to want to know where will they get their employees from. And they're going to want to hire locally, but how will those employees get to their jobs? And just as access to education opportunities are important, also access to employment centers is also important. So I think that'll be an impact on us and on any other companies that choose to locate in Polk County.
Pat, did you want to talk about the roads, or are you okay? You don't have to.
You know, transportation planning is an unusual thing, and there's a few of us that actually have done that through the years. It's something that you have to look at very long term, and most transportation plans are made about 25 years in advance. One of the fascinating things about doing that is we can plan what our needs are, but we always struggle to find out what the finances available to fund those improvements are going to be. That is subject to drastic changes related on things that are primarily related to economy and somewhat related to political choices along the way. When we look at some of the roads now that have been identified that are really critical to Polk County and really to the region and to Florida, those things were really identified many, many years ago, most of them 20 or 25 years ago. But what has happened in the meantime are a number of other things that weren't predicted. CSX, Intermodal Logistics Center, was not predicted back 10 years ago. And even 5 years ago, when we first started looking at the plans, we didn't really know when that would begin operation and what other things were coming. So what we see now is that many of the roads that have been identified as really needing throughout Polk County are now going to be needed much more than we even anticipated. And unfortunately, having gone through the recession and then the subsequent slow recovery, many of the revenues that were coming in that were available, particularly to the county or to our other governments, those began to dry up, and the revenue stream has been difficult. So it really does bring to the forefront how critical it is to look at how we are going to deal with the needs that are coming online. I feel very fortunate that Polk County made some wise decisions in investing in their transportation system, and that has resulted in we caught up with some of our kind of things that have fallen decades behind. But now things are accelerating in needs, and so there's never been a more critical time to look at how we are actually going to build those transportation facilities, such as the Central Polk Parkway and other major facilities that have really been designed to serve all of our communities really in Polk, because those are really central connectors that really link East and West Polk County with the State Road 60 area and the I-4 area.
We've had a couple questions on why, I'm going to find them really quick so I read them. Why invest in roads and transit now? Why not wait? And I think that's kind of an open-ended question for everybody here, that you could all take a stab at it if you like, or not.
I'll start. We can just go right on down. This is not the first time that we've considered this transit referendum. This is, we tried this 4 years ago, and it did not pass. From my perspective, with the senior population doubling in 10 years, we don't have any more time to sit around and decide what to do. We need to move. We need to take some action so that we can put real solutions into place. It takes a long time to, as you've just pointed out, we need to have a plan to move forward so that we can actually have reasonable infrastructure in place to deal with our changing population.
Oops. That is a little heavy. Sorry. I apologize. Why not now? Why would you wait to implement something that is so very needed? I cannot imagine where my 10-year-olds will be 5 years from now without access to quality of life programming that they can only access by way of public transportation. The Colts program was implemented, which saved some of my high school teenagers, not only because they needed to be able to get to programming, but because that programming provides a level of education and mentorship in the afternoon that gets them out of a cycle that their families have been a part of for generations. Why not now? Why would we wait to implement something that is such a need? And it's cross-generational. It's not just moms, teen moms that need this. It's seniors. It's single parents that are trying to get to college but also have kids and have no car. Why not now? I was reading an article from the American Public Transportation Association. I think it was 2007, and it was the average cost to have a car or to get a car. The expenses would be about $6,200. That is like half of the annual salary for some of the families that I work with. Why not now? Why would we not do this now so that we can stop a cycle? Transportation is, in my opinion, the #1 issue that we have in programming, whether it's getting our kids to parks, whether it is getting our kids to quality programming that happens in downtown cities, or whether it's getting our kids to Polk State College or to the next level of education wherever they're at. So my question would be reversed and say, why would you not do this right this very moment so that we can stop a cycle that's been ongoing that puts us, 7th in the nation? It's kind of important.
Well, I'll just add, it's been my experience when you ignore a problem, it doesn't go away. It only gets bigger and bigger, and then it starts to snowball. So when the argument is compelling, I think we need to act.
I think the thing that I would say is when we look at transportation, we look at how a lot of our transportation problems in the past were provided for. We looked to the north and to the east, to Washington, D.C. and the federal government to send us funding to help take care of our local needs. The truth is that we can look, but there's not very much coming down the pipeline. And so that is no longer an option for a lot of the needs that we have locally. The same is true to a certain extent in states. But what I've really seen nationally is a trend that's beginning to happen is that many communities are coming together and said, instead of waiting for the solutions to come from somewhere else, we're going to look for solutions in our own community. And where they have done that, they have come together, business, civic, government, but really led in many cases by business, saying we've got to find some of our own solutions. We need to make them cost effective. We need to make them things that fit what we need in our community and not what another agency may say we have to do in order to receive money. And so with that, it's been a return to the kind of, if we all come together to solve problems, we come up with better solutions. And so I think this is one of those times that in transportation, we are at a crossroads that we have to decide what kind of decisions and choices Polk County wants to make because there aren't other resources that are going to come and take care of those problems for us.
What is the impact of sales tax adjustments on business growth in terms of new businesses locating here, and is it significant?
I would be happy to answer that if I was an expert on it or if I had any specific information, but I must confess I have done neither research on it or I'm not an expert on that.
I have a question, Bob, regarding CSX rail uptick. Any conflicts with rails to trails movement? And I don't know what that means either. Okay. Do you know, Pat, rails to trails? Okay, we're not really sure. If anyone wants to provide a definition on a note card and send it this way, we will answer that. Could you clarify the financial trade-off, and this is for anybody, and we may or not be able to swing this. Could you clarify the financial trade-off, i.e. this tax will cost people, but another tax will be decreased, if anyone wants to address that?
Jane will. I'll explain it the best I understand it, and if somebody has a different point of view, but basically what we're talking about doing is there's a trade-off here. You basically have three ways that you're going to fund this through taxes. You're going to fund it through property tax, you're going to fund it through sales tax, or you're going to fund it through, I forget the third one. Okay, so there's a third one. But basically, in the third one, I can't remember because it just wasn't an option as a way to try to fund this. So right now, the transit is funded through the property tax, but as we've said, it's undersourced. As property values decrease, the amount of revenue generated from the tax obviously is less. And so we need to make up that deficit in some way, and so it is looked at to do the 1% sales tax. So there'll be a decrease in your property taxes. So that is obviously a benefit to homeowners. But then the idea is that the sales tax is chosen because that's a way to share the cost with our snowbirds and with our other visitors and that type of thing, to make it a fairer tax, if you will, so that everyone is participating in the sales tax.
And actually with that, Dr. Holden, I was wondering, with Polk State College, what have you seen as your return on investment? Because I know in doing that and providing it for your staff and students over the years, while we're on the financial topic, what have you seen as your return on your investment of being a universal access partner in transit?
Well, I think that the reason we entered into the partnership is because our students asked us and they identified transportation as a challenge, not only a financial burden, but just an access issue. So what we're seeing in over doubling our ridership is that it wasn't just a hunch, it wasn't just a guess. We have students who withdraw from classes for non-academic reasons. Those non-academic reasons typically revolve around transportation, childcare challenges, and that's been consistent. So the students that utilize, and I must say it's not just students as well, because our partnership includes our employees with the Polk Transit Authority. So our employees are taking advantage of that rather than pull into the parking lot at 8 o'clock and leave their cars sitting there till 5 o'clock. Families can consolidate their vehicle purchases so that people can get to work full time, and not have a car just sitting in the parking lot.
Thank you for that. And we are all out of questions at the moment, and I would just like to take a moment to thank all of our panelists for participating this evening in our transit discussion, and we hope that you've learned something. I'd like to echo what Dr. Holden said earlier, that you must become educated on your own. You need to decide whether you're voting for a politician as who you line up with the most. You know, what side of the ballot do you line up with the most? But to educate yourself and figure out the depth of the referendum and all the different pieces that go into it, and really see how that benefits you or doesn't benefit your family, and what the long-term issues are for you. And remember too that we're only as good as those who vote. So if our community chooses not to turn out for elections, then we'll continue to go down one path. But I would encourage you to encourage your friends to vote in the referendum in a few weeks. We are in a non-presidential year, so it's really important for people to participate. Is there another question? It's a clarification really quick. And really quick, just to go back to our Rails to Trails turns abandoned rail lines to trails for walking and bike riding. Is there any impact caused by increased rail use that would decrease conversion of rail lines to trails? And I'll go back to Bob O'Malley.
Sure. I mean, the consolidation of rail traffic has already happened. So the Rails to Trails program was a result of abandoned rail lines that were redundant or no longer in use. That's largely played out. So if we're using a rail line now, we're using it now. For example, you saw the map of our S line. We just put $200 million into our S line. We're not going to abandon that. That doesn't mean that there's not opportunities for Rails to Trails, just not along existing freight right-of-way. So.
Right. I hope that provided some clarification for our audience. Thank you for discussing that. And just again, to wrap up, one of the things that we've been talking about at Polk Vision for the last couple months is, and Jane Hammond mentioned that we're the 7th most impoverished county. We have the 7th worst transit system. We know in Polk Vision, the 7th most obese metropolitan service area in the nation. And we're also just learned from Forbes magazine that we're the 8th least educated. And I'm not ending on a down note, but I want you to know that at Polk Vision and at Lakeland Vision and all of our community stakeholders, we want to be best. We want to be the best county in Florida. We want to be the best county in the United States. And to do that, it takes community involvement. It takes discussions on really hard topics that make people squirmy and make people very uncomfortable to move us forward. So we appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. We know you're committed citizens and that you're really active in your communities, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate, again, all of our panelists and Polk State College. Thank you.
Good job.